Here in this video, we're going to understand independent event versus dependent event. Independent event is the one when outcome of next experiment is not dependent on the outcome of previous experiment. Let's try to do an experiment where we roll a dice and we try to find the probability of getting a 4. So to find the probability, this is the formula we use. In our case, it's going to be probability of a 4 equals to number of favorable outcome, which is 1, and then divided by number of all possible outcome, which is 6. So the probability is gonna be 1 by 6. The final probability which we get is 0.17. Let's do the second experiment and let's repeat the same thing. Again, we're gonna roll a dice and we're gonna find the probability of getting a 4. Same formula will be applied and we will find probability of a 4 equals to number of favorable outcome divided by all possible outcomes. It's going to remain same. No matter how many times you roll a fair dice, the number of all possible outcome is going to remain same and number of favorable outcome is also going to remain same as long as it's a fair roll dice of one dice only. Okay, so again we're gonna get the probability 1 by 6, which is 0.17. Now what we observe over here is that the outcome of second experiment, this is the second experiment, outcome of second experiment remains unimpacted by the first experiment. In first experiment we did the same activity and in second one also we did the same activity and we got the same probability. So no matter how many times you repeat this experiment, the outcome is going to remain same. On the opposite side, dependent event is the one when outcome of next experiment is dependent on the outcome of previous experiment. What does that mean? Let's do the experiment. Let's consider there is one container which contains 6 balls, out of which 4 are red and 2 are black. So in total we are having 6 balls in this container. In the first experiment we're gonna find the probability of getting a red ball. So the formula goes probability of getting a red ball equals to number of favorable outcome, which is 4, divided by number of all possible outcomes, which is 6. Right, so the probability is 4 by 6, which is 0.66. all right, now let's consider that in this experiment, at the end of this experiment, the ball which was picked up was red itself, so this ball is out of this container. Right now, at the time of when we are going to repeat this experiment, now we have only 5 balls left in this particular container. So this time probability of getting a red ball will be equals to number of favorable outcome, which is 3, and number of all possible outcomes are 5. So the probability is gonna be 3 by 5, which is 0.6. Now if you notice over here, the outcome of second experiment is impacted by the outcome of first experiment. Here we got, in both of the experiment we repeated the same thing, but the outcome of second experiment was dependent on first experiment, because after the first experiment one ball was reduced. Over here if you see, we were left with only 5 balls, because in the first experiment one ball was taken out, and here we were left with only 5 balls. That's why we got this much of probability. So it clearly shows that the outcome in the second experiment was impacted by first experiment. Let's summarize this all once again. Independent event is the one when outcome of next experiment is not dependent on the outcome of previous experiment. On the contrast, the dependent experiment is the one, dependent event is the one when outcome of next experiment is dependent on the outcome of previous experiment. Here we rolled a dice in first experiment and we got the probability 0.17. Again in the experiment 2 also we did the same thing and we got same probability. But in case of dependent event, we did this experiment where we tried to find the probability of red ball, and in the first experiment the probability was 0.66. In the second experiment we repeated same thing, but probability which we got was different, because in the second experiment one ball was reduced because that was picked out in the first experiment, right? So this is how we saw that in the dependent event outcome of next experiment completely depends on the first experiment. There is one option which is called replacement. In replacement, so in first experiment we took out the ball. Now before doing the second experiment, if we put that ball again into the container, then again we will get the same kind of probability, same value of probability. So in case of dependent event, if you do the replacement, it will work as the independent. After each of the experiment, if you keep on doing the replacement, it will result as the independent event. So I just hope that the concept is clear to you. Just in case if you liked it, give a thumbs up and do not forget to share it with your friends so that it could reach out to the audience who really need this. In the next video, we're gonna be understanding about simple event versus compound event. Until then, happy learning. Wish you very all.